Okay, so today we've been talking a lot about culture, and one of the aspects of culture is that culture is shared. And so, what I'm wondering is, what do you think is shared and perhaps not shared when you're in a situation like yourself, a young person and a family that's growing here in the United States with family back in both Guatemala and Mexico? Do you think that there are certain things that are shared and certain things that are not shared?
Yeah, certainly. For example, like I have a lot of family that's in Guatemala and Mexico, as you said, and I have a family here, and I feel like we don't share sometimes the same obviously we don't share the same language. For example, we don't like I speak English, and most of my family up north speaks English here in Midwest in Minnesota, and down there they don't have the same culture as we do. Like here we have, as since we obviously my parents like brothers and sisters immigrated here as well, and we all got comfortable here in the American life, and we celebrate things like 4th of July and Thanksgiving Day, where if you look back home like at Mexico or Guatemala, we don't celebrate any of that whatsoever. So I feel like there's different types of like the cultures that muchas gracias. There's different things that we share, but as opposed to, like that we don't share. But now, like for sharing, I feel like we do share things like Christmas, for example. That's more of a holiday that's given our religion. That's a big a shared holiday, and we also share things that we have still in common. Like even in Guatemala, there's actually still like American Girl bars and stuff, and it's it's not that it tastes the same, but it's that they're trying to incorporate different cultures and to incorporate people that are tourists that go to Guatemala as well. And same thing with Mexico. They especially like given like big tourist resorts like Cancun and stuff like that. Those still incorporate the same malls and shopping stuff as here, just like kind of share the same cultures and like kind of bring them together and unite them.
Another attribute is that culture is transmitted generation from generation. And when you have a family which encompasses three different countries, how is that an asset and how is it sometimes a hardship for sharing culture generation to generation?
I think it's a hardship because I feel like starting off our culture, like my parents immigrated here obviously, and like I feel like the culture like spreads. They immigrated here for whatever reason, and not just me, but like other families, they all come here for reasons, for different types of reasons, whether it's because it's all over the world. They come for like immigrations or they come for like refugees. There's different types of people that come here for a reason, and I feel like that really does transmit from generation to generation because it shapes you to who you are and who you will be and like who you will have your kids be because of like what your past did. Let's say like for example, like my parents, they immigrated here to give us a better future, and given that aspect, I feel like I want, like if I ever have kids in the future, I definitely want them to provide that same thing that my parents, that same energy and what my parents showed me. I'd like to incorporate for our culture and traditions never die.
Do you think that there's some things that your parents are unable to teach you because you're not in those places that you might have learned differently if you were there?
Definitely, I definitely think that because like again, given my parents immigrated, they went through the whole there's movies about immigration and like they went through that whole phase of crossing the borders and the struggle of like being in a country that you don't know anyone or don't even speak the language. That's something that I will never have to go through. I mean, as opposed to like going to visit France where they speak French and that's a different standard because you go there for traveling. But like they came here for a better life and they started off with nothing, no money, not speaking the same language, and again like not having nobody And I feel like that's something that I won't ever have to go through. So having that aspect makes me like not have the same share as them. Like they went through something that I won't ever go through, which is something that does change me as a person. And I felt like if I went through that, I would be a completely different person than I am today. I'd probably be more aware of what I have here in the United States. And here I was born here, so I'm more of like, oh, I mean, I don't have I'm here, whatever. But I feel like if I wasn't from here, I'd be more aware to like what I'm doing and to double think things. So yeah.
The next one is culture is based upon symbols. And because you are from a bilingual setting, you definitely have a lot of symbols. If we talk about verbal language, you have English, you have Spanish. I'm going to ask you though, I'm going to guess that maybe there's almost 3 different types of Spanish in your house. That you have a combination of both the I don't know if it's going to be, if you're going to say like it's, is it Spanglish sometimes people will say, but I'm going to guess that you have some Americanized slang from your friends from different backgrounds who speak Spanish as well, and maybe even things you learned in your classroom. And I'm going to guess that your mom and your dad, being from 2 different countries, might have a bit different accent at time, or perhaps might have some different words or idioms, slang. Do you think there are different ways of using Spanish as there is different ways of using English?
Yeah, I think that like a lot of nurse Spanish, like given my sisters, we all speak both English and Spanish. My parents, same way. My mom doesn't really speak as much English as like we do, but as you said, Spanglish has run into our home a lot, and also like the slang in English is like we have a lot of different like acronyms, and like nowadays we just use like ITK instead of I don't know, and like the same thing goes for Spanish. Like we use almost the same acronyms as they use here, and we also use different types of slangs. Like we have a lot of different nicknames that we do as opposed to like best friends and or like BFFs. We have different things for that, and I think that that our culture is like based off of those things, like like language is a really main thing in our it's a form of way that's the way we speak, so it's a big thing, and like you said, it is like two different languages, but yet like they're very similar because again we use different acronyms, we use different like nicknames, so we as opposed to saying like the real words, and that makes like borders up our languages into be two different things at the same time, but they're so similar. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. And culture is learned. What do you think has really helped you learn more about your culture beyond your parents sharing just the basics of daily life? Are there any proverbs or folk tales, legends, myths, art, media that has been special to you to learn more about your culture?
Yes, that's a big thing. My parents obviously taught me what they could, but given my parents immigrated here for a better future, they don't really talk about their cultures as much. My mom does, but my father doesn't. And so that like made me like we could watch more of like media, as you said, and like going to places, especially here in Minnesota. There's like this place, for example, and there's also places like in Lake Street. Lake Street is full of so much of our Hispanic culture, and I feel like going to those type of environments and like watching like news, but like there's Fox 9 here in America. And they have one for Mexico, which is Primer Impacto, and like Desperta America, and like all of those stuff. Like watching it and growing up, I felt like that made me more aware of my culture and made me more of like and like as you said, urban legends and like myths and stuff like La Llorona. There's also other legends about like different types of other things. Like that are like myths, as you said, and I think that like made me aware, like given that people talk a lot about like La Llorona, it was like, oh my god, what's it about? And like I dig more into it, and I found out a lot, and I actually didn't even realize that my mom is like a block away from where it originally started. So I think that's actually really cool because it's something my mom never told me about, and I think like digging in, it made me realize a lot about who I am and where I come from.
So we're to the last one. Culture is dynamic, and what it would really indicate is that culture is always changing. Language changes, customs change, people borrow from different cultures. So it may be indistinguishable in the United States from someone like myself. If it was Guatemalan or Mexican or Mayan, like we might not know where the tradition came from because maybe the same practice happens or the same spice or the similar dish from all those three countries. Do you have any thoughts on how culture has changed as being a person who has multicultures yourself? Do you see some changes at all in any of your in the cultures of either Guatemalan or Mexican or Guatemalan American or Mexican American?
Yeah, I think our cultures, especially given like what's been happening in like like nowadays, I feel like many people are bringing a lot to the table now. They're bringing like their cultures and like comparing the two and like adding more to it. They're like Guatemalan and Mexican, for example. I know that we like my parents tamales, for example. Like there's Guatemalan tamales and then there's also Mexican tamales, and they're two different things. But my mom, she doesn't know how to make Guatemalan tamales. She's not Guatemalan, but my dad does, and I feel like every Christmas we make both of them, and like and they try to combine. My mom this year is actually trying to combine both of them to make one tamale, and I think that's awesome because like we're basically getting the cultures all together, and I feel like like also like a lot of I have my friend that's Indian, and like she like we had a Friendsgiving, and like we all brought like I had a Filipino friend and my Indian friend, and then I had my Korean neighbor, and she's been we all like had a Friendsgiving, and we all had from elementary school. We all knew each other from elementary school, and we decided to do this Friendsgiving thing, and like we all brought different like foods, and I thought that was so awesome because like when you look at the table, you have like tamales, and you have like my friend brought out this jambalaya dish, and my Indian friend brought chicken tikka masala, and it was just so cool looking at the table because everything was so different. we're okay right now, thank you. So I thought it was really cool how like all of the cultures are getting incorporated now, and I think that's something that I really want to keep. I want to keep going in the future because I think like every culture is very important. Every culture has its different things, and I think it's important that everybody knows about and like is aware about everybody's types of cultures. So yeah, I think in my opinion, I love that that's happening. Like I love that a lot of cultures are getting orientated, and like like now we walk into the store and there are different types of people. We have African Americans here. We have white people here. Like, everybody is here. It's not just like it's only limited to Hispanics. It's limited to anyone. Anyone can come in here. And I think that's really awesome.
Well, I can't imagine school lunches without tacos or pizza, and definitely that was something my parents didn't have, and we've seen some real changes in culture way beyond those basic differences, and I thank you for this time today.
Yeah, of course.